Napa Valley, known for its rolling vineyards and idyllic beauty. But on a crisp autumn morning, this tranquility was shattered. The victim, Larry Grigg, a man known for his warmth and generosity, found lifeless in his own home. The scene was chaotic. Police swarmed the property, their faces grim. Evidence was everywhere. Bloodstains painted a gruesome picture. The air crackled with tension. This was no ordinary homicide. This was personal. This was passionate. The investigation began immediately. Detectives meticulously combed through the crime scene. Every detail, no matter how small, could be crucial. The pressure was on. They needed to find Larry's killer and bring them to justice. But first, they needed to understand the story the evidence told. The evidence was damning. Bloodstains splattered across the floor told a story of a struggle, of violence. Whose blood was it? The answer came back quickly: Larry Grigg's. Fingerprints dusted onto surfaces throughout the house added another piece to the puzzle. They belonged to Margaret Rousseau, Larry's wife. But Margaret claimed she hadn't been at the house that day. So how did her fingerprints end up at the crime scene? The evidence was mounting against Margaret. But something didn't quite add up. Detectives delved deeper into Margaret's life, searching for a motive. What they found was a woman battling demons. Demons that whispered in her ear, clouded her judgment, and ultimately led her down a dark and dangerous path.
Behind my bright smile, a storm raged within.
Margaret Rousseau was known for her vibrant personality and infectious laugh. But behind her bright smile, a storm raged within. Margaret suffered from schizophrenia, a debilitating mental illness that distorted her perception of reality. Delusions, a hallmark of her illness, haunted her waking hours. She saw threats where none existed, heard voices that whispered dark secrets. The line between reality and delusion blurred, leaving Margaret lost in a labyrinth of her own mind. Could these delusions have driven Margaret to commit murder? Had her illness twisted her love for Larry into something dark and dangerous? The detectives had to consider the possibility that Margaret's mind, ravaged by schizophrenia, was capable of anything.
Lauren's agony, a daughter's loss, a family's secret. The news of my father's murder hit me like a tidal wave, crashing over me with an intensity I had never felt before. It left me drowning in a sea of grief and confusion, unable to comprehend the reality of what had happened. As the investigation unfolded and suspicion fell upon Margaret, my stepmother, my world shattered once more. How could the woman who had welcomed me into their home, who had always been kind and loving, be capable of such a horrific act? Margaret had always been a pillar of support, a beacon of warmth in our family. She had embraced me as her own, showing me nothing but kindness. Her gentle demeanor and loving nature made it impossible to believe she could harbor such darkness. The thought of her being involved in my father's murder was unfathomable, yet the evidence was mounting.
Lauren began to question everything she thought she knew about Margaret, about her family. The foundation of her reality was crumbling. Digging through old photographs and letters, she sought answers, hoping to find some semblance of truth amidst the chaos. She stumbled upon a series of disturbing entries in Margaret's diary, entries that painted a picture of a woman she barely recognized. These entries revealed a darker side to her stepmother, a side that had been hidden beneath a facade of normalcy. A dangerous obsession with Larry that had been simmering beneath the surface for years, an obsession that had now come to light in the most tragic way possible. Lauren's journey to uncover the truth was just beginning, and with each revelation, she found herself questioning not only Margaret's actions, but the very fabric of her family's history. Determined to find answers, Lauren knew she had to dig deeper. to uncover the secrets that had been buried for so long. Her quest for the truth would take her down a path she never expected, revealing the hidden layers of her family's past and the dark secrets that lay within. As she stood at the threshold of the old house, she knew that what she would find inside could change everything she thought she knew about her family forever. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. The air was thick with tension, as everyone present knew that the outcome of this trial would be monumental. Whispers filled the room, each person speculating about the fate of Margaret Rousseau. The trial of Margaret Rousseau, accused of murdering her husband, Larry Grigg, had captivated Napa Valley. The case had drawn widespread media attention, with reporters and true crime enthusiasts following every twist and turn. Margaret, a once beloved community member, now sat at the centre of a storm of controversy and emotion. The evidence was laid out, piece by piece, painting a picture of a marriage torn apart by mental illness and obsession. The prosecution meticulously detailed the events leading up to Larry's death, highlighting the couple's tumultuous relationship. They described how Margaret's mental health had deteriorated over the years, leading to increasingly erratic behaviour. The prosecution presented a strong case, arguing that Margaret, driven by jealousy and delusion, had brutally murdered Larry in a fit of rage. They recounted the night of the murder, describing how Margaret had confronted Larry in their home, accusing him of infidelity. The argument had escalated, culminating in a violent and tragic end. They pointed to the forensic evidence, the bloodstains, the fingerprints, as undeniable proof of her guilt. The crime scene told a story of struggle and desperation, with Larry's blood marking the final moments of his life. The prosecution's narrative was clear. Margaret had acted with intent and malice. The defense countered with a plea for understanding, arguing that Margaret's schizophrenia had robbed her of her ability to distinguish right from wrong. They painted a different picture, one of a woman trapped in a mind that betrayed her. They brought in expert witnesses to testify about the nature of schizophrenia, explaining how it can distort reality and impair judgment. They urged the jury to see Margaret not as a cold-blooded killer, but as a victim of her own mind, a woman consumed by an illness she never asked for. The defense's argument was a call for compassion, asking the jury to consider the complexities of mental illness and the impact it had on Margaret's actions. The jury's decision would hinge on whether they believed Margaret was a calculating murderer or a tragic figure overwhelmed by her condition. The courtroom fell silent as expert psychiatric witnesses took the stand. The air was thick with anticipation, every eye in the room fixed on the witness box. The jurors leaned forward, eager to catch every word, every nuance that might sway their decision. The battle lines were drawn, and the tension was palpable. Each side prepared to present their case with unwavering conviction. Was Margaret Rousseau a cunning killer who used her illness as a shield, manipulating those around her with calculated precision? Or was she a deeply troubled woman, lost in the throes of psychosis, unable to distinguish reality from the terrifying delusions that plagued her mind?
The prosecution's expert argued that while Margaret suffered from schizophrenia, her actions on the night of Larry's death were a result of her possessive personality and not her illness. They claimed that her mental condition did not absolve her of responsibility. Her actions, they insisted, were driven by a deep-seated need to control and dominate, traits that were evident long before her diagnosis. The prosecution painted a picture of a woman whose jealousy and possessiveness had reached a deadly crescendo. They pointed to her history of jealousy and controlling behavior as evidence of her true nature. Incidents from her past were brought to light, each one a piece of the puzzle that the prosecution believed would reveal the real Margaret Rousseau.
The defense countered with their own expert, a renowned psychiatrist who had spent countless hours evaluating Margaret. This expert argued that Margaret's delusions had completely overridden her grasp on reality. They described a woman whose mind was a battleground, where rational thought was constantly under siege by irrational fears and voices that only she could hear. They painted a picture of a woman tormented by voices that whispered insidious lies and drove her to the brink of madness. Convinced that Larry was a threat to her safety, Margaret's actions were portrayed as those of a desperate woman trying to protect herself from a perceived danger. The defense sought to show that her reality was so distorted by her illness that she could not be held accountable in the same way as someone of sound mind. As the trial progressed, the jury was left to grapple with these conflicting narratives. The weight of their decision was immense, knowing that their verdict would determine the fate of a woman whose life had been marked by tragedy and turmoil. The courtroom waited with bated breath for the final judgment, a decision that would resonate far beyond the walls of the courthouse.